The colony on the edge of the galaxy was a hard place to live. The streets were dusty, the air smelled of old metal and fuel, and the markets were always filled with voices that carried both hope and despair. Daniel Reed, a human mechanic, walked through the hiring fair with tired eyes. His workshop was failing, and without workers he could trust, he would soon lose everything he had built. Around him, stalls were filled with workers shouting their skills. Humans, androids, and even a few alien traders offered their hands for hire. But Daniel's pockets were light, and his reputation was weaker than his wallet. He had been cheated too many times, and now no one wanted to work for him. He felt the weight of failure pressing down on his chest like a stone. Then he saw them, 3 alien women standing alone at the edge of the fair. Their clothes were simple, their eyes heavy with sadness, and their hands folded in silence. No one approached them. People glanced their way, whispered insults, and quickly walked past. Daniel noticed the marks on their skin, tattoos of mourning, the kind worn by widows in their culture. They were outcasts, unwanted, avoided even by their own people. Curiosity made Daniel step closer. "Who are they?" he asked a nearby vendor. The man spat on the ground and shook his head. "Widows from the war. Their husbands died fighting humans. No one will touch them. Bad luck follows them everywhere." Daniel felt a chill. Alien widows whose husbands had died in the war against his kind. He knew why no one wanted them. To most humans, they were enemies, symbols of pain and loss. But as Daniel watched them, he saw not enemies, but broken lives. He walked toward them. The tallest of the 3 raised her head, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "You should not come near us, human," she said softly. "No one wants us, and no one ever will." Her voice carried sorrow, but also strength. Daniel paused, unsure, but then he nodded. "I need workers, and you need work," he said. "Maybe we can help each other." The crowd around them stirred, whispers spreading fast. "Is he mad?" one man sneered. "They'll ruin him," another said. Daniel ignored them, his mind made up. The widows looked at one another, hesitant, as if waiting for one to refuse. But none did. They stepped forward, bowing their heads slightly in respect. "We will work," the tallest widow said. "But you must understand, hiring us will bring you nothing but trouble." Daniel gave a tired smile. "Trouble is already part of my life," he said. "Maybe this time it will be different." That night, the widows followed him back to his small workshop on the edge of town. The building was half broken, the roof leaked, and the machines coughed more than they worked. Daniel wondered if they would leave when they saw how poor his business was. But instead, the widows walked through the shop slowly, touching the tools with careful hands. One of them, the youngest, whispered, "We can fix this." Another, older and with sharper eyes, said, "If you trust us, we will not fail you." Daniel felt a strange mix of relief and unease. He had hired 3 widows who carried the shadows of war. But for the first time in months, he did not feel alone in the fight to save his workshop. The next morning, whispers ran through the colony like wildfire. The human hired them, the cursed widows, people said. Some laughed, others shook their heads in disbelief. But some grew angry. To them, Daniel's choice was an insult, a betrayal. Hiring widows of the enemy was unforgivable. Daniel noticed unfriendly faces watching his shop as he worked with the widows. They fixed broken tools, cleaned the machines, and worked harder than anyone he had ever hired. Still, the air outside grew darker, heavy with suspicion. And one night, as Daniel locked the workshop door, he found a crude message scratched into the wood. "Fire them, or burn with them." He stared at the words, his heart pounding. The widows stood behind him silently, their glowing eyes unreadable. He wondered for the first time if he had made a mistake. Was he saving them? Or was he leading them, and himself, into disaster? The morning sun rose weakly over the colony, its pale light stretching across the dusty streets. Daniel stood outside his workshop, feeling the stares of the people around him. Whispers followed him like shadows, every step heavy with judgment. He had hired the alien widows, and no one would forget it. Inside, the three widows worked quietly. Their movements were graceful, almost like a dance, each one knowing where to step and what to touch. The youngest, with soft silver eyes, cleaned tools with delicate care. The eldest, sharp-eyed and steady, repaired a broken engine part with skill Daniel had never seen. The third, silent and strong, carried heavy metal pieces with ease, her presence calm but unshakable. Daniel watched them for a moment, realizing they were not ordinary workers. They had skills, discipline, and a quiet loyalty that surprised him. But outside, the storm of hatred grew. A group of men passed by, their voices loud with anger. "Human fool," one spat. "He gives work to widows of our enemies." Another laughed cruelly. "They'll cut his throat in the night. Wait and see." Daniel ignored them, but the words stayed like thorns in his mind. That evening, as he walked to the market, an old friend stopped him. "Daniel," the man said, lowering his voice, "I've known you for years, but this is madness. You'll lose customers, maybe even your life." Daniel shook his head. "They're good workers, and they need a chance." His friend frowned. "They are cursed. Their kind killed ours in the war. Do you want that blood in your workshop?" Daniel did not answer, because deep inside he felt the same fear. Yet when he thought of the widow's sad eyes, he could not bring himself to send them away. Days passed, and the widows transformed his workshop. Machines that had been silent for months roared back to life. Tools were sharpened, walls cleaned, and broken parts neatly stacked. For the first time in years, Daniel felt hope flicker like a small flame in the darkness. Customers began to return, drawn by the sudden order and efficiency. But with every coin Daniel earned, the whispers outside grew sharper. Some said he was bewitched, others claimed the widows were spies. The colony was not forgiving, and its memory of war was long. One night, Daniel awoke to a strange noise. He grabbed his old rifle and stepped outside. The cool air carried the scent of smoke. His eyes widened. His workshop door was burning, flames licking the wood where the warning had been carved. He rushed forward, beating the fire with a cloth until the widows appeared beside him. The strong one lifted a barrel of water with ease and poured it over the flames. The eldest widow pressed her hand against the scorched door and whispered something in her alien tongue, a sound filled with sorrow. When the fire was out, Daniel stood trembling. His workshop was safe, but the message was clear. Someone wanted him ruined. He turned to the widows, his voice hard. "Do you see what this is doing? If I keep you here, they'll destroy everything." The tallest widow stepped closer, her eyes glowing faintly. "We warned you, human. You chose us, and now your people hate you for it." Her words were calm, but her voice carried a hidden pain. The youngest widow looked down, whispering, "We will leave if you want us to." Daniel's heart ached. He saw the fear in their eyes, the weight of rejection they had carried for so long. They had expected this because it had happened everywhere they went. But Daniel also remembered how they had worked tirelessly, how they had saved his machines, how they had saved his workshop from the fire. Slowly, he shook his head. "No, you stay. If they want to fight, they can come to me. I won't send you away." The widows exchanged looks, surprise flickering across their faces. For the first time, a faint warmth touched their expressions, a tiny spark of trust. Daniel knew the road ahead would be harder than ever. But something inside him whispered that his decision, risky as it was, would change not only his life, but theirs too. As the colony slept uneasily, shadows gathered around Daniel's workshop. The whispers had turned into anger, and anger into plans. Daniel had chosen the widows, but the colony was preparing to make him pay. The colony was restless. Daniel could feel it in the air, like a storm waiting to break. Every time he stepped outside, eyes followed him, filled with anger, doubt, or fear. But inside his workshop, a different world was slowly forming. The three widows worked with quiet strength, their hands skilled, their movements steady. The machines purred again, tools shone under the lamplight, and even Daniel's small living quarters felt warmer with their presence. Yet questions haunted him. Who were they before they became widows? Why did people hate them so much, more than other aliens? And why did their eyes carry a sorrow, so deep it felt endless? One evening, as the workday ended, Daniel finally asked, "You never speak about your past. I think I deserve to know." The widows exchanged uneasy glances. The eldest, with sharp eyes and a voice like carved stone, answered slowly, "Our past is not one you will welcome, human." Daniel crossed his arms. "If I trusted you enough to bring you here, then trust me enough to tell me." The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of cooling engines. Finally, the youngest widow stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Our husbands fought in the war. They fought against humans, and they died. That is why we are cursed. That is why your people hate us." Her words fell like heavy stones. Daniel's chest tightened, the truth pressing into his thoughts. The rumors were right. Their husbands had been the enemy. The eldest continued, her eyes unflinching. "When the war ended, we were not taken as prisoners, but as reminders of defeat. Our own kind abandoned us. Your kind despised us. We are widows of enemies, and that is a brand that never fades." The strong one, who rarely spoke, added quietly, "Wherever we go, people see only blood on our hands, even though we never held the weapons ourselves." Daniel turned away, his mind in chaos. He had brought them into his home, into his workshop, and now he wondered if he had made the gravest mistake of his life. The colony would never forgive this truth, and perhaps neither could he. Yet when he looked back at them, he saw not monsters, but survivors, broken by choices that had never been theirs. Before he could speak, a knock thundered against the workshop door. Daniel grabbed his rifle, motioning the widows to stay back. When he opened it, 3 men stood outside, their faces grim. One pointed at him. "You think we don't know who they are? You hide enemy widows under your roof? This is betrayal." Daniel's grip tightened on his weapon. "They're workers, nothing more. Leave my land." The man spat. "If you will not drive them out, the colony council will, and you will fall with them." When they left, the widows stepped out of the shadows, their faces pale with fear. The youngest whispered, "This is how it always ends. They will drive us away, or kill us, and you will lose everything because of us." Daniel felt torn in two. His heart told him to protect them, but his mind screamed warnings. If he kept them, the colony might turn violent. If he cast them out, he would return to his empty, failing life. That night, Daniel could not sleep. The words of the widows replayed in his head, along with the angry threats of the men. When dawn came, he found the widows already at work, repairing a large engine that had been dead for years. The strong one lifted a heavy gear into place, while the eldest adjusted the circuits with careful precision. The youngest handed tools without hesitation, her movements quick and practiced. Daniel stared in awe, realizing they had knowledge far beyond ordinary labor. These were not helpless widows. They carried skills that could rival master engineers. As the engine roared to life, the widows looked at him silently. For a moment, Daniel felt pride, but also dread. Their secret skills, their hidden past, their presence. It was all fuel for suspicion. If the colony discovered what they could do, things would only grow worse. When night returned, Daniel sat by the dim fire with them. He asked softly, "Why do you stay when you know the danger? You could run, vanish, and save yourselves." The eldest replied, her voice steady, "Because you gave us something no one else would, a chance. We will not abandon it. Not yet." Her words stayed with him long after the fire died. Daniel realized their past was darker than he feared, but their loyalty was stronger than he expected. Still, outside the workshop, hatred was spreading like wildfire. And soon, he knew, the storm would break. The council's warning spread quickly through the colony. By sunrise, everyone knew Daniel Reed had enemy widows under his roof. Some people whispered about curses, others shouted in the streets that he was a traitor. Daniel ignored them as best as he could, but each day the stares grew colder, the insults louder. Inside the workshop, the widows worked without rest. Engines that had been rusting for years now roared with power. Customers who dared to cross the angry crowd found repairs faster than they had dreamed. Coins filled Daniel's pockets again, yet fear filled his heart. He knew success was useless if the colony decided to tear everything down. One afternoon, as Daniel bent over a broken generator, sparks burst suddenly from the machine. The wires snapped, fire leapt, and before he could react, the metal casing exploded outward. Daniel was thrown back, his skin burning, his vision blurred. He gasped for breath, certain this was the end. Then hands pulled him away, firm but gentle. The strong widow lifted the heavy wreckage off his body, her strength greater than he had ever seen. The eldest pressed strange salves onto his wounds, the smell sharp but soothing. The youngest whispered calming words in their alien tongue, her cool hands steadying his heartbeat. Daniel blinked through the haze, realizing they had saved his life. When he awoke hours later, the widows sat close by, their glowing eyes filled with quiet worry. "You live because we chose to act," the eldest said, her tone flat. "Others would have left you to die." Daniel tried to sit, wincing at the pain. Why? After all this trouble, why not walk away? The strong one answered softly, "Because you did not walk away from us." Their words carved deep into his chest. For the first time, Daniel felt something stronger than trust, something like a bond. But outside, that bond was already being tested. The next day, from members of the colony council arrived at his workshop. They wore dark coats, their faces cold as stone. One of them, a heavy man with sharp eyes, spoke loudly so the crowd outside could hear. "Daniel Reed, you stand accused of harboring enemies of the human race. You will dismiss these widows at once, or your business will be shut down." Daniel clenched his fists, heat rushing to his face. "They are workers, nothing more," he said. "I will not throw them out because of your hate." The councilman sneered. "Your pride blinds you, Reed. They are poison, and when it spreads, your blood will be on your own hands." The widows stood silently behind him, their heads bowed. Daniel knew they were used to this, used to being treated as less than living beings. But something inside him snapped. "No," he said firmly, his voice carrying across the street. "I won't fire them. I won't let fear rule me." Gasps echoed through the watching crowd. The councilmen left with promises of punishment, their faces twisted with rage. The crowd dispersed, but Daniel knew this was only the beginning. That night, as the widows worked quietly by lamplight, Daniel spoke to them. "The colony won't forgive this. They'll come harder next time." The eldest widow looked at him calmly. "Then prepare yourself, human, for we will not run." For a moment, Daniel saw something in her eyes, not just sorrow, but strength born from years of rejection and survival. He realized they were not simply workers, not simply widows. They were warriors in their own way, carrying scars the colony could never see. As the night deepened, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His wounds still burned, his mind still raced. But his choice was clear now. He would stand with them, no matter the cost. Outside, unseen figures watched the workshop from the shadows. The council had failed to break Daniel's resolve. So others, darker and more desperate, prepared to do what words could not. The days after the council's visit were heavy with silence. Customers stopped coming, afraid to be seen at Daniel's workshop. Coins no longer clinked in his pocket, and the machines sat still. The colony had chosen to punish him not with fire, but with starvation. Daniel paced the floor late into the night, his face pale from both pain and worry. The widows worked quietly, repairing tools and cleaning metal scraps, but even they knew the shop could not survive much longer. Finally, the youngest spoke, her voice soft. "You will lose everything if no one returns." Daniel slammed his fist against the workbench. "I know, but what choice do I have?" The eldest widow looked at him, her sharp eyes glinting. "There's one chance. The colony needs engines for the new transport ships. The council will grant the contract to whoever can build faster and better." Daniel frowned. That contract is for the guild masters, not for us. The widow's voice grew steady. Not if we prove them wrong. For days, they labored with relentless focus. The widows moved like shadows, their knowledge deeper than Daniel ever imagined. The strong one lifted heavy engines, as if they weighed nothing, holding them steady while Daniel bolted pieces into place. The eldest rewired circuits with alien precision, her hands moving so quickly they blurred. The youngest balanced them both, sketching designs on scraps of paper that revealed new ways to improve speed and fuel use. Daniel watched with awe, realizing these women carried secrets of engineering far beyond human skill. At last, the machine was finished, a sleek, powerful engine, stronger than anything Daniel had built before. Its hum filled the workshop with energy, and for the first time in weeks, hope returned. "We will take this to the council," Daniel said. "If they see it, they cannot deny us." When they brought the engine to the colony hall, the crowd gasped. The machine gleamed with strange patterns, glowing faintly as if alive. The council examined it with narrowed eyes, whispering among themselves. One of them finally spoke, his voice dripping with suspicion. "This is not human work. This is alien technology, forbidden and dangerous." The crowd stirred, anger rising like a wave. "Spies," someone shouted. "Witches," another cried. Daniel stepped forward, his voice firm. "They are workers. They built this with skill, not weapons. This engine could change the future of this colony." But the councilman sneered, "Or it could destroy it. We will not allow enemy hands to control our future." The widows lowered their heads, their faces unreadable. Daniel felt his stomach twist. Their greatest achievement had become their greatest threat. That night, back in the workshop, Daniel paced restlessly. "They will never accept you," he muttered, "no matter what you do." The eldest widow finally spoke, her voice quiet but strong. "We knew this, human, but we also knew you would fight for us, and that is enough." Daniel stared at her, anger and confusion burning inside him. "You saved me. You saved this shop, and now they want to burn you for it. How can you accept this?" The strong widow lifted her head, her glowing eyes steady. "Because we have nothing left to lose, but you, Daniel Reed, still have something to protect." Her words sank deep into him. He realized the widows were not fighting for themselves anymore, but for him, and though the colony threatened to destroy everything, he felt something inside him grow unshakable. He would not let them fall, not while he still had breath in his body. But outside, in the shadows of the colony streets, whispers grew darker. The council's anger had failed, but others were ready to strike. Daniel had chosen the widows, and now enemies moved in secret, preparing to end the human who dared to defy them. The colony no longer whispered, it shouted. Every street corner carried the same story. Daniel Reed had given shelter to enemy widows, and now he had let them build alien machines. Children were pulled away when he walked past, doors closed when he neared, and angry voices followed him everywhere. But Daniel no longer bowed his head. His resolve was hard, forged by the loyalty of those three who worked beside him. Still, danger was closing in. One evening, as Daniel closed the workshop doors, he noticed a shadow move across the alley. Too quick, too silent. When he rushed outside, he found no one, but the uneasy feeling clung to him like smoke. The widows sensed it too, their glowing eyes scanning the darkness as if expecting an attack. The betrayal came the next morning. A group of enforcers stormed the workshop, armed and cold-faced. At their front was Marek, a rival mechanic who had long envied Daniel's skill. He smirked, pointing at the widows. "These are spies. They use alien tech to poison our colony. I demand their arrest." Daniel stepped in front of them, his voice sharp. "They are workers, nothing more, and they've done more for this colony than you ever have." But Marek held up a datapad, his grin cruel. "Proof," he said, "schematics taken from your shop, alien codes hidden inside the machines." Gasps filled the street as the crowd pressed closer. Daniel's heart sank. realizing someone had stolen the widow's work and twisted it into evidence. This was no accident. Marek had betrayed him. The council ordered a trial, and the widows were dragged before the colony's people. They stood silent, their heads high despite the curses thrown at them. Daniel fought to speak, to defend them, but every word was drowned by the crowd's anger. Finally, the eldest widow raised her voice, cutting through the noise. "You call us enemies, but you do not know the truth." The crowd hushed, curiosity piercing their rage. Her eyes glowed brighter, her voice steady as steel. "Our husbands did fight in the war. Yes, they died with human blood on their hands, but they died because they stood in the way of our leaders. They died because they protected humans when the order was to slaughter them." The words struck like thunder. Daniel stared in shock, his mind reeling. The widows continued. "We are cursed not because we lost, but because we refused to hate. Our people branded us traitors. Your people branded us enemies. And so we were left with nothing." The crowd wavered, voices rising and falling, some doubtful, some shaken. Marek shouted above them, desperate to hold control. "Lies. All lies. They twist words to save themselves. Do not believe them." But Daniel stepped forward, his voice burning with anger. "I've seen their loyalty. I've seen their sacrifice. They saved my life when they could have let me die. They saved my shop. They saved my future. And still you call them poison." He turned to the people, his voice carrying. "If these women are enemies, then I stand with them. If they're cursed, then curse me too." The widows looked at him, their eyes wide, their silence filled with something unspoken. Gratitude, trust, perhaps even something deeper. The council, divided and uncertain, called for more time before judgment. But everyone knew the decision would not come from the council alone. It would come from the people, from the whispers that spread in every dark corner. That night, Daniel and the widows sat together in the workshop, the firelight flickering against tired faces. The youngest whispered, "You should not have defended us. Now they will come for you as well." Daniel shook his head, his voice firm. "They were already coming for me. I chose you once, and I will choose you again." For the first time, the strong widow smiled faintly, a rare and fragile thing. "You do not fear losing everything?" she asked. Daniel answered without hesitation, "I fear losing what is right, and that is you." Outside, the colony boiled with unrest. The betrayal had shaken everything. The widow's secret had changed the story, and Daniel's defiance had lit a fire no one could put out. The storm was no longer waiting. It was here, ready to consume them all. The colony had reached its breaking point. Whispers turned into shouts, shouts turned into threats, and threats were only one step away from violence. Daniel knew the council would soon decide, but he also knew the people wanted blood. He braced himself for the worst, ready to defend the widows, even if it cost him his life. But the storm came from another place. One night, alarms screamed across the colony, the sky lit by streaks of fire. Raiders, human and alien alike, had come to strike the outer rim settlement. Ships dropped from the dark clouds, and armed figures poured into the streets, their weapons glowing. Panic spread like wildfire, doors slammed shut, families ran for cover, and the councilmen who had condemned Daniel hid behind their guards. Daniel grabbed his rifle, his hands steady despite the fear. The widows stepped beside him, their glowing eyes sharper than ever. "We will fight," the eldest said, her voice calm. Daniel looked at them, stunned. "You'll defend the people who curse you?" The strong widow answered, lifting a heavy iron bar like it weighed nothing. "We will defend the innocent, not their hate." The raiders struck the market first, tearing through stalls, stealing supplies, and dragging people from their homes. Daniel and the widows rushed forward, their steps sure. The youngest worked quickly, reprogramming broken defense drones with her alien skills. The eldest directed the townsfolk, her voice cutting through chaos, rallying them to fight together. The strong one faced the raiders head-on, her blows like thunder, her strength scattering them in fear. Daniel fired shot after shot, covering the widows as they turned the tide. For the first time, The colony saw the truth with their own eyes. These widows were not curses, they were shields. When the raiders tried to breach the power station, the widows stood firm. The eldest overloaded the engines they had built, turning them into a wall of fire that drove the raiders back. The youngest guided frightened children to safety, her hands steady even as fire rained down. The strong widow pulled Daniel out of the rubble when an explosion threw him aside, her grip unshakable. Hours passed in fire and blood, until finally the raiders fled into the night, leaving behind silence broken only by the cries of the wounded. The colony was scarred, but alive. And it was alive because of the very widows it had hated. As dawn broke, the people gathered in the square, their faces pale with exhaustion and awe. The council stood trembling, their proud voices lost. One elder finally spoke, his voice heavy. "Daniel Reed, you brought these women here, and we called you a traitor, but last night they saved us all." The crowd murmured, heads lowering in shame. Children clung to the widows, the same children who once hid from them. Mothers wept as they thanked them. Men who had cursed Daniel now bowed their heads in silence. Daniel stood beside the widows, his chest heaving, his body bruised, but his heart steady. "They were never enemies," he said, his voice carrying through the square. "They were only waiting for someone to give them a chance. And I am proud it was me." The eldest widow looked at him. Her eyes saw for the first time. "You risked everything for us. Now we are no longer widows of war, but family of this colony." The youngest smiled faintly, hope shining where sorrow once lived. The strong one placed her hand on Daniel's shoulder, steady and firm. "You gave us life again. We will never leave your side." The colony, broken but humbled, began to see them not as curses, but as saviors. And Daniel, once a failing mechanic, now stood as proof that a single act of trust could change an entire world. The workshop roared back to life in the weeks that followed. Machines hummed, tools shone, and laughter returned to the walls. But this time, Daniel was not alone. He had 3 widows by his side, no longer outcasts, no longer cursed, but warriors of loyalty, strength, and redemption. And so the story of Daniel Reed and the alien widows spread across the stars, not as a tale of betrayal, but as a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing a human could do was to see past hate and offer a chance.